What if I told you that beneath your feet right now could lie an entire civilization, complete with schools, churches, and neighborhoods, just waiting to be discovered? This isn't the plot of a fantasy novel. This is exactly what happened in 1963, when a Turkish homeowner's simple renovation project triggered one of the most mind-bending archaeological discoveries of the modern era. Picture this: a quiet morning in Derinkuyu, a sleepy village nestled in Turkey's otherworldly Cappadocia region. The landscape here looks like something from another planet. Towering rock formations called fairy chimneys pierce the sky, carved by millions of years of volcanic activity and erosion. But on this particular morning, something far more extraordinary was about to emerge from beneath this alien-looking terrain. The homeowner had a modest goal: knock down a basement wall to create more storage space. Simple enough, right? The soft volcanic rock that characterizes this region had been carved and shaped by locals for generations. It was nothing unusual. But when his hammer finally broke through that wall, what greeted him wasn't more storage space. It was a doorway into the impossible. A void, then another and another. What started as a home improvement project had just uncovered the entrance to what would prove to be the largest underground city ever discovered. Not just a cave, not just a hideout, a complete metropolis, engineered with a sophistication that would make modern city planners envious. Word spread through the village like wildfire, then to the regional authorities, then to archaeologists who arrived expecting to catalogue yet another interesting cave system. What they found instead shattered every assumption about ancient engineering capabilities. Derinkuyu wasn't just underground, it was impossibly deep. 18 floors carved directly into the bedrock, plunging 280 feet into the earth. The scale was staggering. Sophisticated enough to house up to 20,000 people, along with their livestock, food stores, and everything needed for extended underground living. But here's what made the discovery truly extraordinary. This wasn't a hastily dug bunker. Every corridor, every room, every ventilation shaft showed evidence of meticulous planning. The engineering was so advanced that experts struggled to understand how ancient peoples could have solved problems that challenge modern architects. The initial exploration teams moved through levels that revealed increasingly complex urban planning, residential quarters that could house entire extended families, communal areas designed for social gatherings, storage facilities that could sustain thousands of people for months. Workshops where craftsmen had plied their trades in eternal darkness. Each level told a story of human ingenuity pushed to its absolute limits. The deeper the archaeologists went, the more questions arose. Who had possessed the vision to conceive such an ambitious project? What had driven an entire civilization to literally go underground? And perhaps most puzzling of all, how had something this monumental simply vanished from human memory? The discovery sent shockwaves through the international archaeological community. Universities dispatched research teams. National Geographic arrived with cameras. The sleepy village of Derinkuyu suddenly found itself at the center of a historical mystery that would take decades to unravel. But the most profound impact was on the locals themselves. For generations, they had walked above one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements without knowing it. The ground beneath their feet held secrets that would rewrite the history books and challenge everything historians thought they knew about ancient capabilities. As excavations continued, each new discovery raised the stakes. The underground city wasn't just big, it was brilliant. Every engineering challenge that would face a subterranean community had been anticipated and solved with remarkable ingenuity. The architects of Derinkuyu had created something unprecedented, a fully functional city that could operate completely independent of the surface world. The magnitude of the achievement began to sink in. This wasn't just ancient engineering, this was ancient urban planning on a scale that defied comprehension. Whoever had built Derinkuyu had solved problems that modern cities still struggle with: air circulation, water distribution, waste management, security, and social organization, all while operating 280 feet underground. But how did they do it? How do you create a breathable atmosphere for 20,000 people deep underground using only ancient tools and techniques? In our next chapter, we'll explore the engineering marvels that made the impossible possible. If this incredible discovery has blown your mind, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. Give this video a thumbs up if you want to see more mind-bending historical mysteries, and drop a comment below. What amazes you more? The fact that they built this underground metropolis, or that it stayed hidden for centuries? How do you keep 20,000 people alive and breathing 280 feet underground without a single piece of modern technology? The answer lies in engineering solutions so ingenious that they would make today's architects wonder if we've actually progressed as much as we think. The first challenge facing Derinkuyu's architects was literally a matter of life and death: oxygen. Imagine trying to supply fresh air to a population the size of a small city, buried deeper underground than a 20-story building is tall. The solution they devised was nothing short of revolutionary. More than 15,000 ventilation shafts were carved throughout the complex, some plunging as deep as 300 feet. But these weren't random holes in the rock. Each shaft was precisely positioned and angled to create a natural air circulation system that would operate 24/7 without any human intervention. The physics behind this system reveals knowledge that supposedly wasn't discovered until centuries later. The underground city's architects understood that temperature differences between levels would create natural air currents. Hot, stale air would naturally rise through dedicated exhaust shafts, while fresh, cool air would be drawn down through separate intake channels. It was essentially a massive, naturally powered HVAC system that never stopped working. But oxygen was just the beginning. Water, that most essential element for survival, required an equally sophisticated solution. The engineers had identified underground springs and created an intricate network of wells that distributed fresh water throughout every level of the city. The water system included not just distribution, but filtration and purification processes that ensured safe drinking water reached even the deepest chambers. The hydraulic engineering reveals an understanding of fluid dynamics that was remarkably advanced. Water channels were carved with precisely calculated gradients to ensure consistent flow without waste. In the deepest levels, enormous cisterns stored reserves that could sustain the entire population for months during a siege. This wasn't just survival planning. This was strategic thinking that anticipated extended underground living. Living spaces throughout Derinkuyu demonstrate how ancient architects adapted domestic life to subterranean constraints. Family quarters were carved with mathematical precision, maximizing every available cubic foot. Domed ceilings distributed the massive weight of earth above, while curved walls eliminated dead corners where moisture or structural problems might develop. The social organization of the underground city was reflected in its architecture. Upper levels housed communal spaces, vast halls where the community could gather, collective workshops, and food storage areas. Middle levels contained family residences, organized into underground neighborhoods with controlled access points. The deepest levels served specialized functions: livestock areas, long-term storage facilities, and in some sections, spaces dedicated to religious worship. Security was woven into every aspect of the design. Massive circular stone doors, weighing up to 100 pounds each, could seal off entire sections of the city. These rolling barriers operated only from the inside, turning each level into an independent fortress. Hidden escape tunnels, concealed behind false walls, provided evacuation routes to the surface or to neighboring underground cities. Internal communication systems included tunnel networks that connected different sections, allowing coordinated movement throughout the complex even during emergencies. Strategically placed acoustic chambers amplified voices, creating a communication network that could relay critical information across the entire underground metropolis. Perhaps most remarkably, the city included facilities that went far beyond mere survival. Educational spaces where children learned in underground classrooms, workshop areas where craftsmen continued practicing their trades. Even recreational areas where the community could maintain social bonds despite the claustrophobic environment. The waste management system reveals planning that considered long-term habitability. Sophisticated drainage networks channeled waste away from living areas, while composting areas converted organic waste into fertilizer for underground food production. Nothing was left to chance. Every aspect of human habitation had been anticipated and engineered. Temperature control throughout the complex maintained comfortable living conditions regardless of weather on the surface. The thermal mass of surrounding rock provided natural insulation, while the ventilation system could be adjusted to regulate temperature in different zones. It was climate control that operated independently of external conditions. Storage systems throughout Derinkuyu could sustain the entire population for extended periods. Granaries with climate-controlled environments preserved food for months. Wine cellars maintained optimal conditions for fermentation. Oil storage areas kept fuel for lamps and cooking. The underground city was designed for complete self-sufficiency. Food production within the complex included spaces for keeping livestock and areas where certain crops could be cultivated in controlled environments. The architects had created a closed-loop ecosystem that could theoretically operate indefinitely without surface contact. The interconnected nature of Derinkuyu systems reveals engineering thinking that considered the city as a single, complex organism. Every system supported every other system. The ventilation network also served as a communication system. Water channels doubled as drainage during heavy rains. Storage areas could be converted to meeting spaces when circumstances required. This wasn't just ancient engineering. This was systems thinking that anticipated and solved challenges that modern urban planners still struggle with. The architects of Derinkuyu had created something unprecedented, a completely self-contained urban environment that could function independently of the surface world for extended periods. But who were these engineering geniuses? What civilizations possessed the knowledge, resources, and sheer determination to carve an entire city out of solid rock? In our next chapter, we'll uncover the fascinating succession of peoples who called the underground world home. What drives an entire civilization to abandon the sunlight and build their future in eternal darkness? The answer takes us on a journey through millennia of human ingenuity, where successive peoples didn't just survive underground, they thrived, creating communities that functioned as efficiently below ground as any surface city. The story begins with the Hittites, that formidable Bronze Age civilization that dominated Anatolia from roughly 1800 to 1200 BCE. But these weren't just another ancient empire. They were master engineers who understood that true power lay not in conquest alone, but in the ability to protect their people from the endless waves of invasion that swept across this geographic crossroads. Cappadocia's location made it inevitable that any expanding empire would eventually march through these lands. The Hittites, recognizing this geographic reality, developed a defense strategy that was nothing short of revolutionary. If they couldn't stop armies from crossing their territory, they could make their population simply vanish beneath the invaders' feet. The earliest levels of Derinkuyu bear the unmistakable hallmarks of Hittite craftsmanship. Spacious, utilitarian chambers carved with bronze tools that left characteristic marks in the volcanic rock. The Hittites had discovered that Cappadocia's soft volcanic tuff could be carved relatively easily when fresh, but hardened upon exposure to air, creating structures that could last millennia. Archaeological evidence suggests the Hittites weren't building just a refuge. They were creating an alternative way of life. The scale and sophistication of the earliest construction phases indicate long-term thinking that went far beyond temporary emergency shelter. This was urban planning for permanent underground habitation. When the Hittite Empire collapsed around 1200 BCE, Derinkuyu didn't become a tomb of forgotten civilization. Instead, it became the foundation for even greater achievements. The Phrygians, who established their kingdom in the region during the 8th and 7th centuries BCE, not only occupied the existing levels, but undertook massive expansion projects that pushed the boundaries of underground engineering. The Phrygians brought crucial technological innovations. Their ironworking capabilities, far superior to Bronze Age techniques, enabled more precise carving and the creation of increasingly sophisticated systems. Distinctively, Phrygian artistic elements found throughout Derinkuyu's middle levels show that these people weren't merely occupying a pre-existing structure, they were making it their own. Phrygian expansion phases reveal a civilization that had fully embraced underground living as a viable urban lifestyle. They added levels specifically designed for industrial activities, metalworking shops, pottery kilns, textile production areas. The underground city was becoming a complete economic ecosystem, not just a place to hide from surface dangers. The arrival of Christianity in the region transformed Derinkuyu once again, but this time the transformation was spiritual as well as architectural. Early Christians facing persecution from Roman authorities discovered in the underground city something far more valuable than physical protection. They found a sanctuary where their faith could flourish without interference. Christian renovation of Derinkuyu reveals a community that had found in the depths not just safety, but sacred space. Chapels carved directly into the rock, complete with altars oriented according to liturgical traditions. Baptismal chambers where new converts were welcomed into the faith. Educational spaces where children learned scripture alongside practical skills. The Christian levels of Derinkuyu show evidence of a thriving intellectual community. Libraries where religious manuscripts were copied and preserved. Study halls where theological debates took place in the absolute silence of the depths. The underground city had become not just a refuge from persecution, but a center of Christian learning and cultural preservation. Social organization during the Christian period reflected the egalitarian ideals of early Christianity. Unlike surface cities, with their stark divisions between rich and poor, Derinkuyu's Christian community seems to have operated on principles of shared resources and collective responsibility. The architecture itself enforced these values. No palatial chambers for elites, no servants' quarters for the underclass. The Byzantine period marked Derinkuyu's golden age. As inheritors of Roman engineering expertise, but practitioners of Orthodox Christianity, the Byzantines brought both technical sophistication and spiritual purpose to the underground city's final major expansion phase. It was during this era that Derinkuyu reached its maximum capacity of 20,000 inhabitants. Byzantine engineering improvements reveal centuries of accumulated underground living experience. Ventilation systems were optimized for maximum efficiency. Water networks were expanded to serve every corner of the complex. New tunnel connections linked Derinkuyu to other underground cities throughout Cappadocia, creating a vast subterranean network that spanned the entire region. The defensive sophistication reached its peak during the Byzantine period. The massive stone doors that could seal entire sections weren't just barriers. They were part of an integrated defense system that could compartmentalize the city during attacks. Enemy forces that managed to breach outer defenses would find themselves trapped in isolated sections, while the main population remained secure in deeper levels. Historical records from the Byzantine period describe Derinkuyu's role during the Arab invasions of the 7th and 8th centuries. Entire populations would disappear underground for months at a time, emerging only after invading armies had moved on. The underground city had fulfilled its original purpose on a massive scale, enabling civilian survival during prolonged military campaigns. Each civilization that inhabited Derinkuyu left distinctive markers of their presence. Hittite carving techniques, Phrygian artistic styles, Christian religious symbols, Byzantine architectural innovations, all layered throughout the complex like geological strata of human achievement. Archaeologists continue to decipher these cultural layers, each revealing new insights into how underground communities adapted and evolved over centuries. What emerges from this archaeological evidence is remarkable. Derinkuyu wasn't just a shelter that successive civilizations used during emergencies. It was a functioning urban alternative that proved viable for over a millennium. Each generation didn't just survive underground. They improved the city, expanded its capabilities, and created communities that were in many ways more sophisticated than their surface counterparts. The continuity of use across multiple civilizations suggests that underground living offered advantages beyond mere protection. The climate-controlled environment, the sense of community fostered by shared space, the efficient resource utilization, all of these factors made Derinkuyu an attractive urban option even during periods of relative surface stability. But if Derinkuyu was so successful, why did it eventually fall silent? How does a thriving metropolis housing thousands of people simply vanish from human memory? In our final chapter, we'll explore the mysterious abandonment and remarkable rediscovery of this underground wonder. How does a city capable of housing 20,000 people simply vanish from human consciousness? The final chapter of Derinkuyu's story reveals as much about the nature of historical memory as it does about the forces that can erase even humanity's greatest achievements from collective awareness. The decline of Derinkuyu wasn't marked by catastrophe or conquest. There was no final siege, no dramatic last stand that sealed its tunnels forever. Instead, its abandonment reflects the subtle but profound geopolitical shifts that transformed Anatolia during the medieval period, changes that made underground living not just unnecessary, but obsolete. The rise of Ottoman power in the region brought more than political change. It brought a completely different philosophy of urban life and territorial defense. The Ottomans didn't just establish control, they established peace. Their administrative systems, trade networks, and monumental architecture were all oriented toward the surface world, toward cities that celebrated imperial power under open skies rather than in hidden depths. For Ottoman administrators, underground cities represented the mentality of a bygone era. The empire's reach extended from Europe to Asia, encompassing trade routes that brought prosperity to regions that had once been battlegrounds. Cappadocia had transformed from a dangerous frontier into a peaceful province within a vast, stable empire. The need to disappear underground had evaporated along with the threats that had originally justified Derinkuyu's existence. The population that had maintained underground traditions for generations began to see their future on the surface. Economic opportunities concentrated in Ottoman commercial centers, where merchants and artisans could prosper within an integrated imperial economy. Young people no longer saw value in preserving the underground knowledge that their ancestors had guarded for centuries. This demographic shift had practical consequences that accelerated Derinkuyu's decline. Families who had maintained the complex engineering systems for generations began to forget the maintenance techniques. Ventilation shafts became clogged without regular cleaning. Water channels silted up from neglect. The massive stone doors became too difficult to operate as the knowledge of their mechanisms faded. During the 16th and 17th centuries, Derinkuyu experienced a period of partial adaptive reuse. Local farmers utilized the upper levels as natural refrigeration for food storage and wine cellars. Shepherds used some sections as winter shelter for livestock. But these pragmatic uses required only a fraction of the original infrastructure, leaving vast sections of the underground city to gradually deteriorate. The transformation from functioning city to fragmentary storage facility marked a crucial psychological shift. What had been a complete urban ecosystem became a collection of useful caves. The integrated systems that had once supported thousands of residents were no longer maintained as a whole, only as individual components that served immediate practical needs. Generational knowledge transfer began to break down. Children growing up in surface communities heard vague stories about old tunnels, but the specific knowledge about Derinkuyu's extent and sophistication gradually disappeared. What had been precise engineering instruction became folklore, then legend, then half-remembered tales that grandparents shared during long winter evenings. By the 18th century, Derinkuyu had achieved nearly complete invisibility. Main entrances were sealed with debris or simply covered by new surface construction. Vegetation grew over ventilation shafts, hiding them from view. The underground metropolis entered a centuries-long hibernation, preserved by the same volcanic rock that had sheltered its inhabitants for over a millennium. European travelers who visited Cappadocia during the 18th and 19th centuries occasionally noted rumors about ancient caves, but none suspected the monumental achievement that lay beneath their feet. Early archaeologists focused on the region's visible Byzantine churches and dramatic rock formations, never imagining that the greatest archaeological treasure was hidden underground. The 1963 rediscovery was therefore much more than an archaeological find. It was a resurrection. When that homeowner broke through his basement wall, he wasn't just renovating his house, he was opening a portal between two worlds. Between a present that had forgotten and a past that had been perfectly preserved in stone. The systematic excavations that followed revealed not just the physical extent of the underground city, but the sophistication of a civilization that had successfully solved urban challenges that still perplex modern planners. Each excavated level, each analyzed system, each recovered artifact, contributed to reconstructing a way of life that had completely vanished from human knowledge. The impact of rediscovery transcended archaeology. Derinkuyu became a symbol of human adaptability, proof that our ancestors had achieved feats of engineering and social organization that rival modern accomplishments. The underground city demonstrated that innovation often emerges from constraint, that remarkable solutions can develop when communities face seemingly impossible challenges. Modern Derinkuyu receives hundreds of thousands of visitors annually, but their experience is necessarily limited. Only a small portion of the complex is open to tourism. The engineering challenges of safely managing large crowds in such confined spaces prevent full access. Visitors walk through corridors that once echoed with children's laughter, prayers, and the conversations of families who made the depths their home. The preservation challenges facing Derinkuyu today mirror in some ways the challenges its original inhabitants faced. How do you maintain complex systems across generations? How do you preserve knowledge that seems irrelevant to current circumstances? How do you balance access with protection? Contemporary research continues to reveal new insights about underground living systems that may have applications for modern challenges. As urban populations grow and surface space becomes scarce, Derinkuyu's engineering solutions offer lessons for sustainable urban development. Climate-controlled environments, efficient resource utilization, community-focused design, these ancient innovations may inform future city planning. The story of Derinkuyu ultimately demonstrates that human achievement often exceeds human memory. Civilizations capable of extraordinary innovation can also be extraordinarily forgetful. The underground city that housed 20,000 people reminds us that the past is full of solutions to problems we think are uniquely modern. Achievements that were forgotten, not because they failed, but because they succeeded so completely that they were no longer needed. Today, as visitors descend into Derinkuyu's preserved corridors, they encounter more than historical artifact. They discover proof that human ingenuity, when pressed by necessity, can create wonders that transcend their original purpose to become permanent testimonies to the extraordinary potential of human community and creativity. In the depths of Derinkuyu, the past and present converge, reminding us that some human achievements are truly timeless, waiting beneath our feet to inspire future generations with the knowledge that impossible is just another word for not yet imagined. And that concludes our incredible journey through the hidden history of Derinkuyu. If this series has amazed you as much as it has us, make sure to like this video, share it with fellow history enthusiasts, and subscribe for more mind-blowing historical content. What strikes you as more remarkable? That such a city existed at all, or that it was completely forgotten for centuries? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know what other historical mysteries you'd like us to explore. Remember, history is full of wonders waiting to be rediscovered, sometimes literally beneath our feet.